The jungle in which you hunt essentially is the mid and the small cap space, companies which are in the range of about $1 billion to $5 billion of market cap. That's where all the action, excitement and euphoria is. So is this a horrible, miserable and a terrible time for an investor like you?
No, it's not. I mean, you see the great thing about being in the space, and we look at even below that, we look at even starting 100 million or so, right? And the thing is that in that space, you can always find some players because there are just so many people to do. It's like being in a forest with thousands of trees, right? So yes, not all the trees would grow, but there's some that would definitely grow.
So
right?
where have you planted seeds?
So we've been strong believers in the consumption theme, right? I've shared that before. I think with the increasing income, with the demographics that we have, I think people's desire to consume is just one of those very basic natural instincts that always stays, right? And I think as people earn more, as affordability increases, they're going to keep consuming more. So we keep finding ideas that are, in that space, adjacent to that space, and where we see a long enough runway of growth, and we invest in those.
You have a very large exposure to NBFCs, and the one which stands out is Chola Mandal. Given that there has been a big reset for PSU banks, NBFCs may just struggle in future because up until now NBFCs have managed to grow because banks were not lending aggressively. Is that a structural risk for companies like Chola now, that banks will get aggressive, they suddenly have money?
So I think I would say 2 points. One is obviously it's very good for the system, right? The fact that the PSU banks, which are struggling, they've gotten the capital, I think is good for the overall economy. But it doesn't solve the problem. It's a fix. If you take an analogy, it's like a patient who's waiting for a treatment. This is like the glucose saline solution. It doesn't cure the problem. It just strengthens you a little bit so that you can bear the treatment. And the treatment is that you need to take those losses, right? And so that is yet to come. So I don't think fundamentally it will change the trajectory of those banks meaningfully. I think it would allow them to grow a little bit. I think previously they were completely struggling. And in that sense, yeah, they may take away some share back from NBFCs. So that is true. But I think if you look at NBFCs or the small finance bank, again, there is a role for them to play, and they'll continue to play that.
So you are in no hurry to log out of Chola Mandal?
See, I think Chola is like, some of the other players like that have a good future ahead of them. I think the key thing is execution, and I would say if anything, I think a bigger worry or uncertainty is how the leadership change will impact that company.
There has been a leadership change.
Yeah, so I think I would say that's a bigger uncertainty, and I think we need to see through how the leadership change impacts the trajectory of growth of the company. But I don't think the PSU capitalization impacts that in a meaningful way.
You have a very strong reputation, and markets and investors are aware of your potential to identify multi-baggers, whether it is Avanti or whether it is Vaibhav or iShare. So every time you come on my show, you're expected to say something new and something big. In last 6 months, which is 2 quarters, which are the 3 names you acquired?
So I'll talk about things which are already in public domain, yes, right? So I think we've done investment in Neuland Labs. So I think that's we made an investment in the public company. We also acquired a stake in the holding company. Both are getting merged together. We think it's a terrific company in a very good space. In some ways, I think the entire healthcare or pharma industry is getting beaten down. But there are always exceptions. There are always companies that are on a secular growth path, and we think that Neuland is one of them. And I think there's a terrific management team that can capitalize on that potential.
What is so unique about Neuland?
I think it's very tough to convince an drug innovator in the Western world to give them access to their IP, to their molecules, to sort of build them, to custom synthesis, do the custom synthesis for those molecules. And you need to build tremendous amount of trust before somebody allows you to do that, right?
So and they're a third-party manufacturer.
They're third-party manufacturer, but for innovator drugs, is a very big difference compared to building APIs for generic companies versus partnering with an innovator to help them through their sort of drug discovery process, through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It requires a lot of coordination, it requires a lot of trust, It requires a lot of chemistry skills because you're not just mass manufacturing. You're experimenting. You're coming with a better or cheaper or more efficient ways of coming up with something, and it takes many years to build that reputation and that comfort and rapport with the customers, and they have done that, and so I think it's now up to them to keep executing, to get more customers, to get more molecules with those customers, and as they do that, I think that business can grow multifold of where there is today.
Okay.
But it will take several years for that to happen.
So just to understand it very simple, Neuland essentially is a third-party manufacturer, but they are making products which are slightly complex and complicated in nature, and that explains why margins are strong. What happens if the OEM buyer, not the OEM buyer, but the buyer of drug, innovator drug here, witnesses serious pricing pressure? Could that have an impact on Neuland's spread or profitability?
See, if you look at an innovator drug, the cost of API is somewhere between 1% to 5%, is negligible, right?
Okay.
So, and in most cases, if it's a new drug, it's going to be patent protected. So there's no pricing pressure per se, right? So all this concern around the generic products and so forth doesn't really impact them because they're in a slightly different category. Obviously, they do have some exposure to generic APIs which they manufacture, but I think if you're looking at the company over the next 5 years or 10 years, I think the balance is going to be shifted towards these more complex, innovative products, more custom synthesis, and that's where the margins are significantly higher, and you're more protected compared to the generic API market.
Avanti has been a multi-bagger investment for you. I was looking at data in the morning, and I think the stock in last 3 years has emerged as one of the best performing small cap stock. It's up 14 times. Are you still happy to own it?
We still have a sizable stake. We have trimmed our exposure a little bit. We don't want any position to become very large in the portfolio, but it's been a phenomenal investment for us, and I think it is because the company is doing a phenomenal job. I don't think it's because we
Are the problems in Thailand behind them?
See, the problems in Thailand never impacted them.
Okay.
Right? So the Indian business was never impacted. In fact, if anything, it benefited from the problems in Thailand. I think most people, I'd shared that with you before as well, that people were very concerned about the risk in this business. They never looked at the opportunity, right? And it's one of those rare things where you find a great company with a very focused management team, and the consensus is to stay away from it. I think those are the places where you have the potential to generate significant returns. For many years, they've been growing at 50% year on year, with ROEs north of 50%, and yet people continue to ignore them. I think they were trading at 10 times PE even as far back as a year ago, right? So there was a tremendous value in there, and eventually markets always recognize it, right? Sometimes it takes a longer time, it takes more time for people to get comfort with the story, to fully comprehend the story, but eventually they always do, right? Markets and people are very smart, so they will always figure it out. It's just that in some cases may take a little bit longer.
We always tend to focus on what is the next big theme, where do you think the puck is going to move? But I want to spend some time and I want to understand from you is that what do you think is unlikely to change? Bezos once brilliantly said that the customer at the center will never change, and the customer's appetite to buy something cheap or chase a product which is cheap will never change. So let's apply that Bezos theory to your portfolio. What do you think is unlikely to change in your existing portfolio for next 3 or 4 years?
So I think the two sort of things that we just talked about earlier, right? There's this propensity of people to spend money and to consume things, right? It's not going to change. Nothing is going to change that. Only thing that changes is how much they buy and what they buy.